if you're
Yes.
doing something productive, making something productive, you can't assume that that is going to lead to success or money or fame or power or whatever else. But it is probably reasonable to say that something positive will come out of it. You got to network, you got to reach out to people, you got to let people know that you're looking, you got to reach out to people you used to work with. And then for every job, you need to pursue the hiring manager or people in the company. So for every job that you identify that you're interested in, we will bring you 5 to 7 contacts that are right where that job is in the company.
What's it like working for Steve Jobs, Garrett?
It's a grand adventure.
I mean,
I think anybody who's ever worked for him thinks that.
Did you feel like he was a visionary when you were working with him, or was he just another boss that was particular? I mean, what was the timeline? So you said the last 3 years of Next before being brought back into Apple. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, so obviously he was already famous from having founded Apple. And then he founded Next. And, and Next did not explode, right? They struggled the entire 10 years. And so I joined, in the last 3 years when, they were even looking at moving away from their initial goals and becoming a web company, right? Because the internet was just coming out in '95, which I guess dates me in my age. But you know what? He was still a visionary, and that was even apparent then. I mean, the reason that I was at Next is because I saw the Next machines, and now they look dated, but you always have to look forward in technology. And when I saw the first Next machine, it was so obviously better in every way than anything that was on the market. It just hits you, in the same way that if you're old enough, you saw the first Macintosh when everything you'd used before that was command line computers. It just basically some part of your brain explodes where you're like, oh my God, it could be this way. It's like a light switch. It's a binary experience. And seeing the Next machines was that way. It's everything that you live on today came from the Next machine. The Mac OS platform that people use, that's Next Step 14.0 or 16.0, and iOS is based on Next Step as well. And so that whole experience came from that. And it was obvious then. And his sense of clarity when he presented or talked about anything that the company was doing was no different then than it became as people saw him, for his Apple 2.0 experience. And so it was hard not to be captivated by that. He was incredibly charismatic, and not just because he was like, oh, wow, it's Steve Jobs. It was what he was saying mattered. His vision for where the world was going, you agreed with it, and everybody that worked at Next were some very, very smart people. I'm not saying myself, but the other people were. They bought into it not because of him, but because his vision was correct, so obviously correct. And that was exciting, and in fact, the frustrating part in those days at Next was that we were all using these machines that were 10 years ahead of everything else on the market, and Next couldn't make money at it, couldn't get it out there, couldn't get other people to use it, and so you'd look and you'd see what Microsoft was working on with, Windows 3.5 or whatever. And it was just awful by comparison. And so
still is, maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to insult anybody, but it certainly is not. It's not an experience that gives you senses of wonder. And
I mean, you can even look at the Windows Phone versus the iPhone. The iPhone still is here and is 30%, 50% market share, and the Windows Phone no longer exists. So, though I did love the user experience of the Windows Phone, but there is something that maybe has lessened as Apple's become more and more corporate. But the products that they create, the hardware products, and the integration between the user experience on the software side and the hardware is what has kind of set the benchmark for all our technological interactions these days.
Completely agree. And I think Steve was unique in recognizing that. He would talk about that, that hardware and software are two sides of the same coin, and you have to be successful, you have to do both. He would say that often, but most people don't. And as a result, you get crappy software on good hardware, or you get good software on crappy hardware, but it's hard to do both. And that's what makes Apple unique to this day, you know, is the quote unquote, it just works, but it's not easy to make something just work. You have to put a lot of work and thought into it. And Steve Jobs was brilliant at that. And,
You are a product guy and partnerships guy, as you mentioned. You've kind of grown up with product management. You're now building a product, which we'll get into. What lessons did you take away about building products? You're building a software product now, but what kind of is imbued in your approach of building software products that maybe isn't as common or as obvious to most software developers and most product managers?
It's not one lesson, it's many. I think the Apple and obviously Steve Jobs driving that culture into Apple is successful for any number of reasons that all have to happen at the same time, right? And I think success isn't one thing. It's a conglomeration of interacting successes across a spectrum of things, right? You have to understand what your user wants, but to quote Henry Ford, if you listen to what your user wants, you'd end up with a faster horse. That's one lesson, right? Is you need to understand their problem, but you have to come up with a novel solution to it. And that's not enough. Once you come up with a novel idea, you have to find the 1,000 little details that you can only discover and you never thought of to make
only discover and never thought of. That's an interesting. I've never quite heard that language, but that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we as human beings feel like we can intellectualize our way to a solution. And I don't think it works that way. I've never found that to work that way at all. You throw something out there, it fails with a few successes, and then you iterate and improve it. And you do that over and over again. And then you wake up a genius if you're successful ultimately, right? And those lessons they're all hard learned through trial and error and failure. And of course you're smart. People, you can be smart and come up with good ideas, but it's I'm trying to think of a really great example. The guy who invented the variable windshield wipers, right? So the amount of work he put in to come up with all the mechanisms to make that work, he patented it, and of course then the car industry stole it from him and crushed him, which is a whole different story. But right, just that little thing, just that little product, right? He had an idea. I wish the windshield wipers would change speeds because I don't always want it flopping back and forth when it's only raining a little bit, leading to, I assume, all sorts of architectural designs around switching and variable voltage to get it to go to different speeds. And how do you have the handle so that the settings are right? Each one of those is a journey, and many times a frustrating journey as a product person, right? You're like, I just wanted to get it out there, and but instead it's just lesson after lesson and discovery after discovery. And it's a lot of times, some person that you're talking to mentions it, and a light bulb goes off because they use a metaphor you hadn't thought of before. They take you outside of your mindset, and I don't know how to encapsulate everything I just described, but like it's a journey.
I do think that's part of the whole thing, is that it's not. I feel like good product management is never something that can be taught. It has to be learned. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can't learn it in an academic sense. You can't read a book and then you are a good product manager. Software or other things you can learn, right? You can learn the theory, you can learn how to do it, and then you can go and practice. And obviously you pick up some more things in the real world. But product management, I've never seen, we have all these dev boot camps cranking out developers, and we have marketing boot camps to the same effect where you go do a Udemy course and then you understand marketing. But product, I think, is something that's far more just a bunch of battle scars that you have from reps and practice and failure, and recognizing that it's a little bit of experience. It's a little bit of having an opinion. It's a little bit of listening to the customer. It's a little bit of just failing and trying multiple things. It's a little bit of going further even after you failed because you still have an instinct that it's going to work. And then also knowing when, okay, well, it's failed enough times, I actually need to abandon it and try something else completely. So it's like it's all these little things together. It's been an interesting, I've spent a lot of time with
Thousand
product,
times
and
yes. I think
I've
that's
never been able
exactly
to
right.
teach it. Yeah, yeah,
No, you nailed it. I mean, and that's what's so, I mean, that's what's so fun and so frustrating about it,
yeah.
is there is no right answer ever, and you don't even know. I'm
I,
always amazed when you hear the stories of some successful product and they thought it was a failure right up until they shipped it,
yeah,
or it was a failure. I mean, even the original Macintosh, and this is, for your listeners now, they don't even remember the Macintosh, but what people don't remember, what the modern pitch is, Steve Jobs created the Macintosh with this team of crazy, amazing, thought-provoking people. And then they fired him and it went on to great success. But the reality is entirely different. They shipped the original Macintosh. Nobody bought it. Nobody bought it. And
and it was
they
like
fired
super behind budget and yeah,
over
like sorry,
cost,
super
not enough
behind. Yeah,
memory,
yeah.
you know,
But it looked
and
beautiful.
it threatened the company because they were making all their money on Apple too. And then it came out and everybody was like, wow, that's really cool. And nobody bought it, because they didn't know how to use it or what to use it for.
Right.
And it took a year later, the release of a companion product, Atlas PageMaker, and the laser writer. And a bunch of people said, I can now do some printing without having to pay an expensive amount of money to do that. And that was the original thing. And that's, going back to your point about, this journey of 1,000 questions, no answers, right? That was one of them. One of them is you can build a great product, like it's the market and finding those users. And in this case, it wasn't who they thought it was going to be.
It's never who you think it is. I feel like it's never who you think it is.
Right. And so it's always a discovery, right? You go on a journey into the jungles and, you meet tribes of people that, that you didn't even know existed, who come to you and say, I will trade for that thing you're carrying on your back. And, it's an amazing thing,
I mean, it's still happening today, right? It's not like this is just because the internet was young or non-existent and technology was less sophisticated. With ChatGPT, with LLMs in general, they had 3.5 out 6 months before they decided to just build a chatbot. Chatbots have been around since AOL, if not before. Like chatbot is not something new. They built this amazing GPT, this new architecture. It was amazing. GitHub actually picked it up and they started building GitHub Copilot very early on. Even 2.5, I think, was a pretty good GPT, and it was far better at predicting text than anything else we had seen before. They open up an API. It's affordably priced, and no one really builds anything. It just kind of sits there. And then eventually they say, oh, well, maybe we'll just have a little demonstration that people can use and try out. It'll be a chatbot, and then the developers will really start building with it and build software and applications. And now it's the fastest launched product ever to hit 100 million users in 30 days or something, doing 6 billion, 7 billion in revenue. And they weren't even trying to market to consumers. They were just trying
And
to have a
I'm
prototype.
willing to go out on a limb here and say that anybody in that team that said that they predicted once they built that chatbot that it would take off like that is lying through their teeth. My guess is that they were all panicked, that they'd spent years and that they were going to fail and that all these efforts were for naught, and probably out of desperation they did that. And I don't have any inside information, listeners, so I'm just
You're probably right,
going,
though. I
but
completely agree.
I would
Yeah.
suspect it was much more like that, because that seems to be the entrepreneur journey is unexpected discoveries. And it doesn't mean that the work they didn't put in wasn't valuable. It's just that mystical discovery moment that you can't ever predict.
I think that's one of my precepts and advice that I give to entrepreneurs is a lot of the success is just about time in the game. So the longer you can just give yourself to keep tweaking, adjusting, trying, experimenting, failing, whatever you want to call it, but just to keep going. If you are in the game for 8 years iterating on a product versus someone who's only been in it for 2 years, or they're burning faster, you have more chances. It's just a law of numbers. The more shots on goal, eventually you'll start figuring out exactly how to shoot that ball the right way, consistently at the right distance with velocity and fit, all that kind of stuff, right? And so if you give
Yeah.
yourself more time, you are more likely, doesn't mean you will find the success, but you're more likely to find something that works for someone somewhere. And if you build something of value for someone, and then you can find more of those someones, then you have a business. Then you can kind of keep growing and building.
I love that, Elijah. And I mean, and that's true for careers too, right? If you're
Yes.
doing something productive, making something productive, you can't assume that that is going to lead success or money or fame or power or whatever else. But it is probably reasonable to say that something positive will come out of it, right? Like you say, you become an expert in your little field, or you manage to build something that maybe upfront isn't successful, but leads to something else, or somebody discovers you because they saw it and said, that was what you built wasn't workable, but the fact that you built it means that you're the kind of person I want to work with.
Yeah, it's all one big discovery journey. Which brings us to your own entrepreneurial journey. AI, what? See how I
Excellent
set all that up
segue. Thank
there?
you, Elijah.
So, job hunting
Yep.
sucks. Everyone knows it sucks.
With an
Tell me
exclamation
about,
point.
yeah, right. I mean, it's just it's such a, it's just shitty. It's not a linear or effective or easy thing to do. It's kind of, I don't know,
Well, and there's the
non-deterministic.
new modern job hunt, now with 10 times more shittiness, you know, it's things are changing fast and not for the better in the job hunt. It's an awful experience, a very painful experience for people. And it's gotten worse because the modern job hunt, and I mean that over the last 6 years, has changed dramatically. AI is one of the vectors for that. The other vectors are the pandemic and Zoom
Hmm.
and remote
Hmm.
work. And and it used to be that you compete locally, for a job, right? And if you were going to move, it was a big deal.
Right,
Now
right.
every job is global. Every job is global. People are applying for jobs, either assuming that they'll work or be able to convince them to hire them on a remote basis from, Acapulco or wherever they live. And so that's the background, and the statistics are pretty grim. The average job seeker is going to hunt 5 months to a year for a job. The more white collar worker you are, the longer that is, potentially over a year. You're going to apply to at least 50 jobs. And many of the people we're talking to are applying for hundreds. Most of them, you're going to get ghosted. When you apply, your resume is going to go into an applicant tracking system, an HR system that companies run, that will look through your resume using keyword tracking systems and maybe a little bit of AI, and will make an evaluation of you against that job post. And if you don't score high enough, you're never even considered. You just go into a black hole. They
Hmm.
don't call you up and say, sorry, you're not a good match. You're just ghosted. And if you do get past that phase, and only 2% of the people who apply for a job get through,
Wow.
those 2% then go into the interview round. And the modern interview now is you talk to 10 people, they give you tests, and probably don't get to know you as a person or the skills you have. And you have to be prepared for that. And then maybe you get a job. And of course, the most
Sounds
important thing.
great. Can you sign me up for a
Yeah,
little
I
bit of
know. I
that? That
think
sounds
everybody should
cool.
do it.
Do a
And
solid
then, of
six
course,
months.
networking, right? Which is
Yeah.
reaching out to people when you're at your lowest point in life, right? Because when you're unemployed, right, it's right up there with divorce, death in the family, all the worst things that can, illness, and so it hits you at your most down, and you have to be your most charming. Hey, can we go grab lunch? I'm really excited about what you're
I
doing.
really would love to catch up.
Right. When you're really there to beg for a job, and they know it, right? Which means they blow you off. And so, you quickly discover that many of the people you thought were friends are not. Um, and so you're right. That's the modern job hunt, right? And we are working on a number of fronts to try and make that more palatable in the short run. And then in the long run, our goal is to upend how that works, to put the job seeker at the center of the job hunt again.
So I
Because,
feel like people have said this before, right? So like job hunting has been a shitty problem for a while.
yeah,
What about how you're approaching it, the now of you approaching it, like is truly changing that for the hunter?
Well, right now, the product that you can use today from Callings.ai accelerates all the different steps of a job hunt, right? So it doesn't take the job hunt away. I'm sorry to say that we can't do that, but we try and make all the different steps. And there's about 7 steps that you need to take for every single job that you want to pursue. And it's
And this is for the
agonizing
individual themselves, right? Not
for,
for the corporations.
yeah, yes. So we come at it from the job seeker side. In fact, we formed because we felt like all the tools were for the job hiring companies and recruiters, not for the job seekers. And
Hmm.
so, the job seeker was left, outgunned by AI
Yep.
and, and outgunned by the number of people and the processes and everything else. And so our goal was to try and level the playing field. And so, Callings.ai uses AI for not just one of the steps, because you can go out and you can get like a resume writer or you can get a cover
Right.
letter writer. What we've tried to do is built an integrated platform so the entire job search happens in one place and we track it all. So we're like a combo of AI and a CRM, so that you have a platform that your entire job hunt is in one place instead of spread out all over. So the average job seeker today uses 16 different tools on average. And that's not manageable, right? And so they build their own spreadsheets, they have their own folders and folders of custom resumes on their desktop, they have notes, and Notable or whatever. And then the fundamental complaint is I can't manage all of this. I'm not getting any applications out. I think I'll go quit and walk my dog. And so our first goal with our platform was to consolidate all of that into one place. So on our platform, we help you figure out where you want to go in your career. Which is the key first step for any job seeker out there, right?
So like
You got to
clarity
know where you're
on
going.
what the ideal role would be, the ideal location, comp, all that kind of stuff.
All the elements. In many ways, it's the same as everything we've been talking about. If you want to discover what you want to do next in your life, you need to also go on a journey. And it's things that excite you. It's your requirements for salary. It's location. It's the type of culture you want to work in, the type of boss you want to have. Is this industry that's going to take off and be successful, or am I going to be in a dead end industry that I'm going to join it and instantly get laid off? I mean, these are all elements of a multidimensional challenge of figuring out what you want to do. But that's the first step, right? Is at least having a sense of where you want to go. And then the second step is to get opportunities for that. And we used AI there to solve a problem that we heard job seekers share with us, which is most of the job hunt platforms are keyword based. So you type in product manager and you get product manager roles. Except maybe you worked at Apple where the product marketing manager is actually both product manager and product marketer. And so if you type in that, if that's what you think is the name and you type it in wrong, you don't get the roles you're looking for. And so keyword searching is not an effective way. We use AI, we read your resume and we compare it against the full job posts for millions of jobs. And then we present the ones that you're most qualified for, which is another aspect. You have to know whether you can apply for a job you're qualified for. If you've never been a product manager, you're not going to get a job as a product manager at Amazon. Highly unlikely, anyways. I guess maybe if you know the right person, you could. But
Yep. Yep.
um, so that's the second one is finding opportunities, right? The third step is researching those opportunities. All the things I mentioned. Is this a good environment to work? Is it in the right place? Do they generally pay well? What's the company doing? Are they going out of business, or are they going to be the leader in this industry? Right. So you have to spec out the jobs you're going to pursue and decide whether you really want to go after them. And then there's the application process. You need a
And real
customer.
quick, just
Yeah.
as you're going through this process, is how much is I'm showing up and I'm having to do more work versus is it the AI is going and doing tasks and coming back? Like, is it collaborative? Is it just
Yeah.
sign up and then it goes and does some stuff and I have to put in some inputs and then it does most of it? Like, because there's always this kind of cognitive barrier of, oh, well, maybe I'll just go walk the dog. So how do you balance the amount of effort that a person, a job seeker, has to put in before they start getting value out of the platform?
Well, we try and make it encouraging for them along the way. I mean, this is a challenge for us as product people. How do you make a job that nobody wants to do palatable enough to do?
Right.
There are people
Changing
out
the
there that
experience and but also getting it done at the same time.
right. Well, and there are there are shortcut products out there that argue that they're going to apply for hundreds of jobs for you using AI. We have not taken that approach after considering that for several reasons. One of which is we think that those companies are going to shut those down pretty soon because that's just spam from their perspective.
Just noise. Yeah, absolutely.
The second thing is that we all know that AI is amazing, but it probably is not best left alone to represent you.
In multiple senses, it's probably not best alone to represent you, sure, but also in the world.
Right, because it can hallucinate, it can misunderstand something that you've submitted, and without guidance, it's an agent that goes out and misrepresents you into the world unless you do it right. And so we try and make all the steps go by very fast for our user while keeping them engaged with the process. And that's our job. And we have some things that I'll have to come on again, Elijah, to share with you that we're working on, which we think can upend this whole process. But at least for now, our minimum viable product is to just make each of these process steps much faster and much more high quality. And so that's our goal, right? So when you find the job, we will customize a resume so that it will get through that ATS system for you so that you can be considered. And that's the goal, is to be found and to be considered. We provide the cover letter writing tools because sitting in front of a blank page is the main problem people have in the job search. Oh my God, I have to write a cover letter. And then they sit there and stare at their computer all day, and then the dog whines and they're like, I'm out, I'm going to go walk that dog. So, so we present a first draft for them, and they can either send it as is, it's good enough to do that, or they can make the changes to make it personalized. But, our belief is that somebody could apply to, 10 jobs a day on our platform pretty easily and with not a lot of work. And
are you seeing any major shifts in just the job market at all? Maybe it's a macro level, maybe it's due to AI, maybe it's due to the economy. Like what is kind of, how is the landscape shifting? And then any predictions? I know predictions are dangerous, but any insights or predictions as to how these things change over the next couple of years? Because I feel like we're in a big state of upheaval in the world, for better or for worse, right now.
I agree. And that's what we're hearing from users. The first thing is, so I mentioned the change in the job market generally. So I think one of the things that they articulate is the white collar recession is happening, or high tech is for the first time laying people off, literally ever in high tech. And those, I think, are reflective of a couple things. One, the tremendous pressure for efficiency and to cut headcount. The identification that white collar headcount is the most expensive headcount, and that if they get rid of it, they can save that money. And the recognition that AI is coming. And there was an article recently that said that when they went out and talked to hiring managers, 54% of hiring managers said that they were going to have less headcount in the future and replace them with AI. So there's that. There's the change in the dynamics of the market, where if you're
do you think that's true? I know that, I'm sure it's true that 50% of them said that, but do you think we're going to have workforce massive displacement, or do you think it's going to be the same amount of displacement that we've had in any new technological evolution, and we'll just have more productivity?
We're going to find out. I don't have the answer to that.
That's the correct answer. I love the debate.
If you type into ChatGPT and you say, help me create an SEO campaign for my company, it does a pretty good job of laying out all the steps, and that used to be somebody's job. And
Yeah.
so, maybe I'm too cynical, and so I don't want to bum people out, but I think it would be dangerous to assume that everything is not going to change and everything is going to be fine. My partner, Philippe, he says this, and I think he's right. This is a new tool, just like fire or the wheel or the smartphone or the internet. And when those things happen, it upends everything. And the people that use those tools will be just fine.
Be a fire wielder.
Right. But if you ignore it and go sit, I guess, across camp without a fire in the cold because you think it's bad, you're probably going to have a harder time of it. But I think it's already disrupting many aspects of our business economy as well as our society. So some other statistics. I wrote an article recently about what's going on with AI content. So this
Content
year,
creation, posts on social media, that kind of stuff.
57% of everything you read on the internet this year was AI generated.
Wow. And this is looking backwards or for
2024.
2025?
2024.
Okay. 50 what? 56?
57%.
57% of content is AI
90%
generated.
of what you read on the internet in 2025 this year is going to be AI.
Wow.
And so imagine what that means. Imagine what that means. That means all those writers, right? Either they're using AI to help them write those articles or they've been replaced. Now, the basis of my article is, what is the impact of that going to mean on AI itself? Because if AI goes out into the world and reads everything to train itself, and it starts training itself on itself, we're going to have a mad cow moment where it's eating its own brains, and and might end up with mad cow disease. So
mad AI disease.
Yeah,
Zombie AI.
The AI self-referential death spiral.
Yeah.
I'm sure that these guys are working on it. And one thing they're doing, the companies are doing, is they are gathering up all of the human-generated content they can so that they've got it to train. But it's worrisome, right? Because AI is not proven that it's really great at generating dramatically new ideas that have never happened before, right? It's great at taking that image, and creating a Picasso-esque style of that, because it can look at Picasso.
Recreate, like proxy creation, but not actually novel creation.
Right.
So,
and maybe it will. I'm not saying it won't, but it's an open question.
I want to go down the dark doomsday path, and let's say there is massive layoffs due to AI. There's a hiring freeze across most white collar jobs, or 50% of white collar jobs. There's also layoffs that ensue as well. So there's this influx in unemployed population. And maybe we just take a microcosm of the US. And what does that look like? I mean, you are perfectly, that would be good for you, I guess, right? Given you're in the business of helping people find jobs. But maybe more philosophically, there's all these conversations about UBI and big grandiose ideas, but what does it tactically and pragmatically look like for the job seeker, as well as maybe within your lens of being a tool and tool suite to support job seekers?
I think it's going to mean that you need to be better understood and found in this world to be successful.
So there's more competition. You need to find a way to stand out. Yeah,
I think. Well, and I hate this because it always sounds like kind of the bullshit stuff people say, right? You have to stand out. You have to be unique. Your own delicate little flower or perfect snowflake. I don't like that type of thinking, but what you really need to do is be able to articulate your true benefit really strongly so people understand it. Because I think people all have that, right? I think people are jigsaw puzzle pieces. And there is a situation out there where they are perfect for it. They're the perfect fit. You put the right person in the right role, magic happens. And and nobody knows how, by the way, how to measure those pieces even today, right? I mean, I go to HR conferences and I listen to the hiring managers and the recruiters talk. And even though they've turned over a lot of their systems to AI to evaluate talent, the first thing that they always say is, we really want to understand people better, because when we do, we can make better choices
Right.
on the hiring process. We think that's going to be the future. And we have some ideas that I can't fully reveal to you here today about how we feel like we can carry people to that better place, and help them be found, help them express their best selves.
Well, we'll
And
definitely have to have you back on once your super stealth features roll out. But
I would love
until
that.
then, um, two questions, maybe two sides of the same coins. First, how do you stand out to an AI? How does a resume stand out to an AI? Because if AI is reading this and there is this kind of need to stand out, obviously there's kind of the fundamental things of making sure that your authentic, unique skills and benefits that match to the company are communicated well and succinctly. But is there anything, whether it's like tips or tricks for, improving your resume or other things that these AI scanners are typically looking for? Any advice on that front?
The first piece of advice is that many of the ATS systems and the things that are reading your resume they're not overly complicated. So AI is coming into that space, but isn't there in mass yet. Most of them work on keyword searching based algorithms, and the simple answer is that your resume should mirror the job post as closely as possible in terms of language and
Right.
skills required and things like that. I don't mean to lie, though. This is important. What I mean is to take your honest, true self and articulate it in a way that mirrors the way the job post is articulated. And
I
so
mean, it
if
goes
you're
back to the example you gave earlier of a product marketing manager. Maybe that's
That's right.
just what that company,
That's
that's
right.
what how Apple refers to it. But most people refer to it as product manager. You'd want to make that change so that
You
it's
would
more
you would
aligned
go
with the
in and you
job
would
description.
change that. If you served the product manager role at Apple, then you should hopefully go back to your resume and put product manager, even though maybe officially that wasn't on your business card, but that
Hmm.
was functionally and honestly what you did, and you should put that on there, because the ATS system may not be as smart, and it'll read in there and it'll just say product marketer. No, we're looking for product managers. You're out.
Right.
And
Right.
so we actually provide a job match score on our platform for our users to show them already how close the resume is to that job, and then we use AI to rewrite a new version of their resume that makes it hew even closer to that role. And so, that's how our tool works today for our users. And the result, is that when you submit, it's still you, but it uses the language that the job post and that company uses, so that they understand you in their terms. And then hopefully you can get to the interview phase. And again, the resume's goal is not to get you a job. The resume's goal is to get you to an interview, and then the interview is to get the job. And so, and customizing the resume is to give your chances. You give yourself a higher chance to get to the point of being considered.
Second question, maybe flip side of the coin. How much is AI as a skill showing up in job descriptions?
This is only anecdotal. I haven't studied it, but a lot. In the same way that people are listing AI on their resumes a lot now for the same reason. I don't think anybody's missing. Well, most people are not missing the fact that AI is going to be a disruptive revolution in technology. And so, people are aligning with that, articulating that, learning it. Um, and I think if you aren't out there, you should, go play around with this stuff, because it's not going away, and it may take parts of the job that you used to do. Um, and if you're successful, you will use it to do a better version of the job that you used to do.
Learn how to use fire instead of being burned by fire.
Indeed. Get asbestos mittens and
Faraday cage mittens, maybe in this
Yep,
context.
yep. Understand how to manage it. Got to figure those early people when fire first came out, they could figure out how to transport and recreate fire after it went out,
Game
and who
changer.
knew how to build a fire that didn't catch the whole village on fire. Like all those skills, I suspect they were revered in the early days.
The fire wielders. I'm sure it was
Indeed. Oh
one
my
of the first
gosh.
job
There goes
descriptions.
Grog. He can manage
Exactly.
fire.
Garrett, any other parting thoughts, words of wisdom for job seekers or entrepreneurs that you want to leave us with today?
It's a funnel. It's like being a salesperson. And to be successful in sales, you have to reach out to a lot of people with the idea that only a small percentage of them will actually close and buy your product. And in this case, the product is you. And so, I mean, I'm sorry to share this news, but there's no shortcut way to get a job unless your dad is the CEO and you can just call him. The correct path is to fill the top of your funnel, to apply for all of the opportunities that you think that you're qualified for and that you're interested in, and then use tools like Callings.ai to accelerate that so you can rinse and repeat really quickly and get a lot of that out there. And we didn't talk about one important element, which we also support and provide a tool for, which is targeted networking. And that is the critical thing. So you have to apply a lot. And then this is the most important thing. You need to network to try and get in contact with people close to the hiring manager or somebody in that company. Because if somebody carries your resume and puts it on top of the pile, your odds of getting hired go up a trillion percent. And so you've got to network. You got to reach out to people. You got to let people know that you're looking. You got to reach out to people you used to work with. And then for every job, you need to pursue the hiring manager or people in the company. We provide a tool for that. So for every job that you identify that you're interested in, we will bring you 5 to 7 contacts that are right where that job is in the company. And this is an added benefit that we add to LinkedIn, which is we don't just present a whole bunch of people. We actually provided the targeted people, and so we feel like we're a real good partner with LinkedIn on that. And they have to do that work. And the short answer is, if you do the work on any given day, you're going to be like, oh my God, this is not going anywhere. But it's a compound interest. If you keep applying, you keep putting yourself out there and networking, you will be successful. You will find a job. And so you have to build that work product into your experience and follow it, and then walk your dog every time you get overwhelmed.
Still need those mental breaks. Garrett, this has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're the best, Elijah. Thank you so much for having me.
If you enjoyed that episode, make sure you check out this video right here. And if you really enjoyed it and you listened to the end, take 2 seconds and share the love so someone else might find it by clicking the thumbs up button and subscribing. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. But click that button.